So I had one story that made me millions of dollars, and I want to teach you and show you how your one story can do the same. I'm Dr. Dan, I'm a coach and a strategist. I'm passionate about the brain, and I'm really fired up to help you take your message to the masses, but with a scientific approach, with the age-old method of storytelling. So here's the deal. Research shows that by adding a story to your message, you will catapult the way it lands with your prospect's brain. It's clear that the studies show us your prospects will remember your message 22 times more if it's accompanied with a story. Your prospects will also have more value for your message, which means they'll spend more. If you're looking to charge more, you need to add a story. The study showed that prospects were willing to pay 56% more money because there was a story involved. And one other study, which was super fascinating, they hired an author who crafted a story to go with one of the objects they were selling. You could go check this out. It's called significantobjects.com. Go to that website, read the stories. You'll see the images of these objects they were trying to sell. They were things that you would buy at a flea market or get for free at a Chuck E. Cheese, and they went on eBay to try to sell them. But when they added a story, it increased the amount of money they got for these items by 28 times. If you're looking to make more money with the same product, service, or offer, a story is the key ingredient. So this happened to me, and as I said at the beginning here, I have been able to make millions of dollars with one story. But I didn't come out of the gates knowing that I should use story or exactly how to use story. It happened through desperation. In 2008, my dad had a heart attack and he was going in for a surgery. Myself and other family members saw him off into surgery. That night, I had drove 2 hours back into my business where I had a big sales meeting with a lot of potential prospects there. And it was one of those days where I just didn't care because I was so focused on my dad and the emotion around that and making sure that he was well and he got through the surgery that I just didn't give a about what somebody else thought of me. And it allowed me to get out of my head and into my heart. And that night, I just shared how I felt. I, for the first time, told them my story. These were two new prospects. They didn't know who I was. They were there to get a specific problem solved. So here I was, letting them have it. And I got a little emotional, I got a little fired up. I just didn't care what they were thinking of me. And it was the combination of being detached with the beauty of telling my story that allowed something magical to happen. Something that I could have never imagined occurred that night and that week. In fact, I had 9 out of the 10 people say yes. They committed to the process and the plan. And up until that point, 50% would have been a good night. That night, it was 90%. That week, we went on to collect $30,000 alone, which I hadn't hit in an entire month up until that point in my business. But that wasn't the biggest thing that changed for me. It was the fact that I felt myself. I didn't feel like I was pushing anybody. I didn't feel like I had to sell. I didn't feel like I had to persuade somebody. I just got up there, I shared my heart, and I shared my story because my story is what drove my heart. And I'm gonna tell you right now, you're doing what you're doing because of your story. And when you figure out how to uncover that, unpack it, reverse engineer it, and deliver it, you will find a freedom that you've never experienced before. Not only a freedom of you being able to do it, taking the weight off yourself, eliminating the stress, to be able to drive more revenue in half the time with half the effort. From that night and that week and that month, I went through a refining process where I refined my story, and it happened through trial and error. I get so many clients now that come to me and they want to know how to build their story, they want to know how to implement in their marketing and their branding and their conversions. And I first have to say, you got to just do it. We teach them the method. I go through the formula. I give them the blueprint, but then they just have to do it. And looking back, that's what I did. I refined it over time. I wasn't perfect at first. It was very clunky, but it just got out of me. And I just had enough results and evidence to say this works. Now I know all the science. I know all the research. That's why I take a scientific approach in the methods I teach to the trust formula, the impact story formula. I can teach the veteran or the newbie how to crush it in their business with a very specific, reproducible scientific approach. But I remember a time about 6 months after I had this revelation when I tried to do it my old way. And I was in with a police officer doing a report, a sales presentation, and I felt so inadequate. I feel like I had no weapons. I feel like I had a gun but no bullets. It just felt so odd because I also felt almost embarrassed to present the finances. I was willing to accept any objection he had. Objection! And say, yeah, you're right. I wasn't willing to combat it, like it's too much time, it's too much money, I can't do it. And I was going with it. And I realized what I was missing was my power, was my leverage, was my advantage to helping them see my motive is not about money. My motive is about my prior experience. And when I used my story, I could just hammer that home because it was very ethical. It felt very high integrity for me when I used my story. But I didn't even want to tell, I had coaches at the time, I didn't even want to tell them what I felt because I feel like that would be weird. Yeah, I feel like when I don't tell my story, people don't buy because the value isn't there. That sounds childish. It sounds like it's story time.
Story time.
And that's what I felt, but I couldn't admit it to anybody. Here's the deal. Now I know that the single greatest way to provide more value is to use a story. Why? Because the human brain thinks in stories. When you nail your story, you not only help them relate, you increase the value of whatever it is you're trying to sell. And I experienced that firsthand. So as you can imagine, I did not go back. I only used my story from then on. And it allowed me to drive millions of dollars of revenue into the business. I ended up at the age of 31 selling the business for almost $1 million. And I'll be the first to tell you, it was all based around the power and the effectiveness of one story. So I want you to hear me when I say this. You have a story. It's powerful and it's worth a lot of money when it's leveraged appropriately. I don't tell you this because it's a good idea. I don't tell you this because I love storytelling. I don't even tell you this because story was the way that it's always been for me. I tell you this because I have found this out through experience, and then I studied the science, and now I teach this to clients over and over and over again. I want to just prove it to you. Look around you. Think about the people you follow, what you buy, who you buy from, who you resonate with. The reason why you resonate and trust somebody is because you relate with their story. Their story is your story. You see yourself in their story. This is where you can charge more. This is where you can stick out more. And this is where you can convert more, which drives revenue, it drives your marketing, it drives your referrals, it drives everything. Think about this. It's all about the brain. Even God himself, the creator of the universe, the creator of you and I, used story 43% of the time in the Bible. Do you not think that that brain is wired for story? The creator of the universe who created the brain uses stories to relay to us humans to have more trust, more belief, more conviction, and more relation. So what's stopping you? Don't tell me you don't have a story, because you do. The question is, are you willing to use it? And this is where everything I do, the formulas, the blueprints, the coaching, the speaking, all of it is now focused on helping you, somebody like you that's just like me, get it to the world so that you can move your mission forward and ultimately move your business and your revenue forward. If you need help on that, I want to know. It's exactly what we do. Remember, clarity brings prosperity, and nothing brings clarity to your prospects more than the power of story. If you agree, hit the like button. If you disagree, hit me a comment. We'll debate it out. Dr. Dan, I'm out.